He opened one of the swinging doors in the counter to allow the children through, telling Sara, "Ma'am," giving her a polite nod before following them. Sara walked over to a row of photographs showing various squads in the Grant County Police Force. Except for her time at college and working at the Grady Hospital in Atlanta, Sara had always lived in Grant County. Most of the men on the wall had played poker with her father at one time or another. Before Sara moved away to Atlanta, Mac Anders had caught Sara and Steve making out behind the House of Chili Dogs. A few weeks later, his squad car rolled 6 times during a high-speed chase, and Mac was dead. She moved on to the next picture, which showed the force when Jeffrey first took over the job as police chief. He had just come from Birmingham, and everyone had been skeptical about the outsider, especially when he hired Lena Adams, Grant County's first female cop. Sara studied Lena in the group photograph. Her chin was tilted up in defiance, and there was a glint of challenge in her eye. There were more than a dozen women patrolling now, but Lena would always be the first. "He said, 'Come on back.'" Marla stood at the swinging doors. "He's back in interrogation, doing some paperwork." "Thank you," Sara said. The station house had been built in the mid-1930s, when the cities of Heartsdale, Madison, and Avondale had consolidated their police and fire service into the county. The squad room was nothing more than a long rectangle, with Jeffrey's office on one side and the bathroom on the other. She muscled open the heavy fire door that separated the squad room from the rest of the building. Sara's heels clicked across the floor as she walked down the long hallway, then stopped outside the interrogation room to straighten her dress and buy herself some time. She had not been this nervous around her ex-husband for a long while, and she hoped it did not show as she entered the room. Jeffrey sat at a long table, stacks of papers spread over the surface, as he took notes on a legal pad. His coat was off, his sleeves rolled up. He did not glance when she came in, but he must have been watching, because when Sara started to close the door, he said, "Don't." She put her briefcase on the table and waited for him to look up. He didn't, and she was torn between throwing her briefcase at his head and throwing herself at his feet. While these two conflicting emotions had been par for the course throughout the nearly 15 years they had known each other, it was usually Jeffrey prostrating himself in front of Sara, not the other way around. After 4 years of divorce, they had finally fallen back into a relationship. 3 months ago, he had asked her to marry him again, and his ego could not abide her rejection, no matter how many times she explained her reasons. They had not seen each other outside of work since, and Sara was running out of ideas. Withholding an exasperated sigh, she said, "Jeffrey." "Just leave the report there," he said, nodding toward an empty corner on the table as he underlined something on the legal pad. "I thought you might want to go over it." "Was there anything unusual?" he asked, picking up another stack of papers, still not looking at her. "Natural causes," Sara told him. "The blood and urine came back clean. There were no remarkable findings during the physical exam. She was 98 years old. She died peacefully in her sleep." "Good." She shifted from one foot to the other, waiting. "Sit down," he finally relented, holding out his hand for the report. Sara did as she was told, giving him the slim file. He scanned her notes. Pretty straightforward. Signing off on the last page, he tossed it onto the corner of the table and capped his pen. "Is that all?" "Mama says hey." He seemed reluctant when he asked, "What do you want?" "Can't we just talk?" "About what?" He rocked his chair back. When she did not answer, he prompted, "Well?" "I just want to—" "What?" he interrupted, his jaw set. "We've talked this through 100 times. There's not a whole lot more to say." "I want to see you." He dropped his chair with a thud. "I'm tired of being tied to that string you just yank when you feel lonely." She opened her mouth but could not speak. He shook his head, apologizing. I didn't mean that." "You think I'm here making a fool of myself because I'm lonely?" "I don't know anything right now except I've got a lot of work to do." He held out his hand. "Can I have my pen back?" She gripped it tightly. "I want to be with you." "You're with me now," he said, reaching over to retrieve his pen. She put her other hand around his, holding him there. "I miss you," she said. "I miss being with you." He gave her a half-hearted shrug, but did not pull away. "I want to be with you. I want to." She looked over her shoulder again, making certain no one was there. She lowered her voice to barely more than a whisper and offered to do something with him that any self-respecting prostitute would charge double for. Jeffrey's lips parted, shock registering in his eyes. His hand tightened around hers. "You stopped doing that when we got married." "Well," she smiled, "we're not married anymore, are we?" He seemed to be thinking it over when a loud knock came at the open door. It might as well have been a gunshot from Jeffrey's reaction. He jerked his hand back and stood up. Frank Wallace, Jeffrey's second-in-command, said, "Sorry." Jeffrey let his irritation show, though Sara could not guess if it was for her or Frank's benefit. "What is it?" Frank glanced at the phone on the wall and stated the obvious. "Your extension's off the hook." Jeffrey waited. "Marla told me to tell you there's some kid in the lobby asking for you." He took out his handkerchief and wiped his forehead. "Hey, Sara." She started to return the greeting, but stopped at the sight of him. He looked dead on his feet. "Are you all right?" Frank put his hand to his stomach, a sour look on his face. "Bad Chinese." Jeffrey tapped his fingers on the table, still annoyed. "Go on home, Frank. You look like shit." Frank's relief was obvious. He nodded again, telling Jeffrey, "Don't forget about the kid in the lobby." "Who is it?" "Something Smith I didn't catch." He put a hand to his stomach and made a sick sound. He turned to leave, managing a garbled, "Sorry." Jeffrey waited until Frank was out of earshot to say, "I have to do everything around here. He's obviously not well." "It's Lena's first day back," Jeffrey said, referring to Frank's ex-partner. "She's supposed to be in at 10. "And? You run into Matt yet? He tried to call in sick, too, but I told him to get his sorry ass in here." "You think 2 senior detectives gave themselves food poisoning so they wouldn't have to see Lena?" Jeffrey walked over to the phone and put the receiver back in the cradle. "I've been here 15 years and never seen Matt Hogan eat Chinese." He had a point, but Sara wanted to give both men the benefit of the doubt. No matter what he said about her, Frank obviously cared for Lena. They had worked together for nearly a decade. Sara knew from personal experience that you could not spend that kind of time with someone and just walk away. Jeffrey dialed in an extension. "Marla?" There was a series of clicking noises as she picked up the receiver. "Yes, sir." "Has Matt shown up yet?" "Not yet." "Tell him I'm looking for him as soon as he walks in the door," Jeffrey ordered. "Is there someone else waiting for me?" She lowered her voice. "Yes, he's kind of impatient." "I'll be there in a second." He turned the speaker off, mumbling, "I don't have time for this. Jeff, I need to see who this is," he said, walking out of the room. Sara followed him down the hallway, practically running to keep up. She started to follow him into the squad room, but pride kept her feet rooted in the floor. A handful of patrolmen and detectives were starting their shifts, sitting at their desks as they wrote up reports or made calls. She could see Brad and his group of kids congregating around the coffee maker, where he was probably regaling them with the brand of filter they used or the number of scoops it took to make a pot. There were 2 young men in the lobby, one of them leaning against the back wall, the other standing in front of Marla. Sara took the standing one to be Jeffrey's visitor. Smith was young, probably Brad's age, and dressed in a quilted black jacket that was zipped closed despite the late August heat. His head was shaved, and from what she could make of his body under the heavy coat, he was fit and well-muscled. He kept scanning the room, his eyes furiously darting around, never resting his gaze on one person for long. He added the front door to his rotation every second time, checking the street. There was definitely something military in his bearing, and for some reason his general demeanor put Sara on edge. She looked around the room, taking in what Smith was seeing. Jeffrey had stopped at one of the desks to help a patrolman. He slid his paddle holster to his back as he sat on the edge of the desk and typed something into the computer.